Hello everybody, welcome back to another exciting adventure reading with Grandma. You know, every time you open a book, you go on an adventure. You don't even have to leave your house. You don't have to pay for traveling expenses, hotels, gift shops. You can just open a book and there you are, having a vacation. So for today's story, it is another one written by my mother, and this one is called The Runaway Hamster. She did base a lot of her stories on things that happened in her childhood or my childhood, my sister and my brother's childhood, things that happened to us when we were kids. She worked them around to the story. The Runaway Hamster is one of those examples. We had hamsters all the time, and we had a cat that loved to be silly and knock the hamster cage over and let the hamsters out. He never ever would hurt the hamsters, but I think he thought it was funny to let them out and run all around and watch us go crazy trying to catch him. So this story tells about a few times when our hamsters got loose. So enjoy The Runaway Hamster. Elizabeth Ann sat on her bed. She felt lonely. She wanted a pet. Her friend Shelley had a goldfish, and Todd had a turtle. Her classmates were always bragging about their pets, but she didn't have anything to brag about. Her father had a dog, but Corky was a hunter, and he was not a pet to be played with. She had a little sister, but Molly was too small to play with. All she did was cry, eat, and sleep. Elizabeth Ann got up and went into the kitchen. Her mother was sitting at the table having a cup of coffee before the children woke up. It was nice to sit and relax for a few minutes. Elizabeth Ann asked her mother if she could have a pet, maybe a kitten or a puppy. "Please, Mommy," her mother sighed and said, "No, I don't think it would be such a good idea. Kittens and puppies are a lot of work, and besides, they can make a big mess sometimes." "What can I have then?" cried Elizabeth Ann. "All my friends at school have a pet." "Let's wait and see what your father says when he gets home from work," her mother replied. "It's up to him if you have a pet or not." "What kind of pet do your friends have?" "Well," said Elizabeth Ann, "Todd has a turtle, Shelley has a goldfish, Meredith has a puppy." She went on and on. Finally her mother said, "That's enough. Let's wait until tonight and we'll ask Daddy." "I don't care. I just want a pet now," she exclaimed. "It's time you learned, Elizabeth, that you can't have everything you want. Besides, I cannot go to the store right now. Molly is too small and it is too difficult taking the two of you on a bus. Besides, it takes time and perhaps looking through several stores before we find something you like, and also the type of pet your father and I would want around. You must understand that buying a pet has to be your father's decision also. We just can't go without consulting him on this matter." "You must wait until I've discussed this with your father," her mother replied. She could see Elizabeth Ann was very disappointed, but she would get over it. "Why don't you go get a book and I'll read you a story before your sister wakes up." Elizabeth Ann stomped into her room, rummaged in her closet, and finally brought a book into the den for her mother to read. It was a story about a little chipmunk. As they sat reading, Elizabeth Ann had a thought. "Mommy, do you think Daddy would let me have a hamster? My friend Bobby has one. They're nice, and a hamster wouldn't make a mess in the house because he would have to be kept in a cage. Do you think I could have a hamster? Please, please?" "Well, I'll just have to wait and ask Daddy. Now, let's finish this story before Molly wakes up." They finished the story, and Mother had just fixed Elizabeth Ann's breakfast when Molly woke up. "Well," thought Elizabeth Ann, "that's all the time I'll be able to have with Mommy for a while." Molly takes up a lot of Mommy's time. She finished her breakfast and went into the den to watch TV. She couldn't enjoy the program, though, because she kept thinking about what Daddy would say about her having a pet. Every little while she would run to her mother and ask her if it was time for Daddy to come home yet. After a while, her mother got tired of saying when Daddy would be home, and told her to go play or watch TV. Later that day, after they had their lunch and Molly was napping, Mother asked Elizabeth if she would like to go outside and play ball. They put on their sweaters and went outside. Even though Elizabeth was having fun, she was anxious for her father to get home and had a hard time concentrating on the game of catch. After a while, they went back inside, and Mother turned on Elizabeth's favorite cartoon. She had been watching a while when she heard someone outside. She looked up and saw her father. She jumped up and ran to the door. "Daddy, Daddy, can I have a pet?" "Whoa," said her dad. "Wait until I get into the house." She jumped and danced around him, hoping he would say yes right away. Her mother came into the living room and tried to settle her down. "Elizabeth, please wait until Daddy has time to set his things off. It is almost time for dinner, so please try to be calm and patient until we have had a chance to discuss this." As they sat down to eat, Elizabeth Ann, much calmer now, explained to her father about asking for a pet. She wanted to know if he would let her have a hamster. "They're not messy because they have to be in a cage," she explained to him. "Please, Daddy, do you think we can buy me a hamster? A lot of my friends have pets, and I would like to have some too." Her father said they would have to think about it, but unless she stopped pestering and gave them a chance to talk it over, she wouldn't get anything. After supper, Mommy and Daddy asked Elizabeth Ann to go into the other room so they could discuss the issue without any interruptions. Elizabeth reluctantly went into her room and put on one of her videotapes and sat down to watch it. But it was too hard to concentrate. She strained to hear what they were saying, but knew she must not interrupt. That might ruin her chances of getting a pet. After what seemed like hours, but was just a very short while, Daddy called Elizabeth back into the kitchen. "We've decided that if you're very good for the next 2 days, Mommy and I will see about getting you a hamster," her father told her. "But you have to promise to mind and also to take care of it. There's a lot of responsibility in having a pet, even one in a cage," her father explained. "We will take you to the pet store, but you must listen carefully while they explain how this pet needs to be cared for. It won't all be fun, you know. Do you understand that?" Elizabeth? She promised her parents she would take excellent care of it, and they wouldn't have to worry about that. Elizabeth Ann thought Saturday would never come. She told some of her friends about the possibility of getting a hamster. They thought that would be great fun. Finally, Saturday arrived, and Elizabeth Ann hurried to get dressed so she would be ready when her parents were, and not keep them waiting. Also, she had kept her promise, and she had been very good. Before long, they called her to get into the car. All was ready for their trip to the store. When they arrived, Elizabeth Ann ran straight to the hamster cages. She looked them over, but was having a hard time deciding which one to choose. "Oh, Mommy, I want them all. They're so cute." "Never mind any ideas like that," her mother explained. "Just pick out the one you think you like best. We have some other shopping to do, so maybe it would be a good idea to pick out the one you like, and we'll come back after it after we're finished our shopping. It won't take long." "All right," Elizabeth said. After looking them over several more times, she chose a brown one with white spots on his back. The clerk assured her he would keep it in the cage they had picked out, and she could pick it up on her way back. How excited Elizabeth was! At last she would have a pet, and perhaps she wouldn't be lonely anymore. They finished their shopping and went back for the hamster and everything they would need for him. After getting settled in the car, Mommy asked Elizabeth Ann what she wanted to name him. Elizabeth thought for a while and decided on Hammy. Mommy thought the name was cute, and Daddy agreed. As soon as they got home, Daddy helped her set everything up on a shelf near the kitchen. Elizabeth stood in front of the cage and talked to him for a very long time, but it was hard to figure out if he liked her or not. He kept scurrying around in circles. Mommy told her that after a while they might get him a wheel to run on. She said hamsters liked them. When it was time for lunch, Elizabeth Ann reluctantly left her spot in front of the cage and sat down to eat. However, right after she finished eating, she was right back in the same spot. Finally, her mother told her it would be a good idea to leave him alone for a while. He might be getting tired of her staring at him. She left him alone reluctantly, but every so often she would find an excuse to walk past his cage and make sure he was still all right. Before she knew it, bedtime had arrived. Elizabeth Ann didn't want to go into her bedroom and leave Hammy all alone. Her mother assured her that he would be all right. All went well for several days. Elizabeth Ann spent a lot of time with her pet. However, one morning she woke up to find the cage empty. Hammy was nowhere to be found. Elizabeth Ann was heartbroken. How could he have gotten out? She had been so careful when she opened the cage door to feed him. Where could he have gone? She started to cry. Her mother, who had been changing Molly, asked her what was the matter. Elizabeth explained to her tears that Hammy was gone. Gone? Her mother said. Did you leave the cage door open? No, cried Elizabeth Ann. I've always been so careful to close it. Well, her mother said, he has got to be somewhere. No one has gone outside. I don't think he could squeeze out anywhere. They both started searching. They looked everywhere, moving furniture and toy boxes carefully so as not to frighten him if he happened to be discovered behind something. Finally, Mother opened one of the lower cupboards in the kitchen. There, by the box of crackers, sat Hammy, munching on a cracker he had grabbed when he chewed through the box. Mother picked him up gently and walked over to the cage with him. She looked over the cage carefully, but couldn't figure out where Hammy had gotten out. Then, as she checked the cage door, she realized the spring on it was not as tight as it should be. Hammy must have pushed against it and gotten out that way. Mommy showed Elizabeth Ann where he had gotten out. Perhaps, if we cannot fix the cage door properly, we may have to get a different cage, Mommy explained to Elizabeth Ann. She adjusted the door as best she could and told Elizabeth to let her feed Hammy for a while so she could make sure the cage was shut as well as possible. About every other day after that, Elizabeth would awaken to find Hammy gone from his cage. She and her mother would spend time looking for him. They always found him in a different place. Once they had found him in Elizabeth's toy box. She told Mommy she was afraid he would smother if he got in there again. Mother assured her that he probably wouldn't smother, but this adventuresome hamster was getting to be a pest instead of a pet. Elizabeth thought it was kind of an adventure, though, looking for him all the time. However, Mother was not as amused as Elizabeth, and she decided they could no longer put off buying a different cage. That evening, she and Daddy talked for quite a while. The next morning, Mother announced to Elizabeth that they would be going to the mall to find another cage. Elizabeth was excited. Maybe they could buy that big one she had seen, the one with all the tunnels in it. She hoped they could. The day came when they would go shopping for a new cage. Her father drove to a different place than the usual pet store they went to. When Elizabeth asked him about it, he realized that one of the men who worked with him had told him about a different pet store that had things cheaper than the one they usually went to. Elizabeth wondered if this new place would have even better cages, so she spent the time thinking about a fancy cage her father would let her get. Before long, they were there. It was a much larger store than the one they usually went to. Elizabeth couldn't wait to get inside, so she ran ahead. Daddy hurried to catch up with her, while Mommy got Molly out of the car. Elizabeth couldn't get over all the things in this store. There were a lot more pets here and a lot of cages. Small ones, big ones, and fancy ones. She was so excited she could barely stand still. Finally, she saw just the one she wanted. It was a large one with all kinds of tunnels and a wheel for Hammy to run on. "Daddy, Daddy!" exclaimed Elizabeth. "Here is just the one I want for Hammy." Her father came over and looked at the cage. By this time, her mother had come into the store carrying Molly. She came over to where they were and looked at the cage too. However, when her father saw the price of the cage, he told Elizabeth that perhaps they should look for a smaller one. Elizabeth was unhappy and started to fuss, but her father told her that she had better behave or she wouldn't get a new cage at all. Elizabeth thought she better not fuss anymore. She didn't want Hammy running away anymore, so she decided to look with her parents to see if they could find a cage that all would be happy with. Finally, they saw one with a wheel and an L-shaped pipe. "Look at this one, Elizabeth," her father called to her. She went over and looked at her cage Father pointed out to her. It wasn't bad, she decided. Maybe if Hammy had something like this with a tunnel and a wheel, he wouldn't be running away all the time. She agreed with Daddy about this cage would do nicely. They paid for the cage and Daddy carried it out to the car. The minute they got into the house, Elizabeth Ann wanted to get Hammy settled in his new home. Molly had fallen asleep on their way home, and Mommy told Elizabeth she would help her transfer everything to the new cage as soon as she laid Molly down in her crib. Before long, Hammy was settled into his new home. Elizabeth was so sure he would like this new home, he would never want to leave. Sure enough, from that day on, they never had any problems with Hammy running away. The end. I hope you enjoyed that. We had many, many, many hamsters run away on us, and we always found them. We just sometimes put a bowl of seed out and watched where they were. So leave a like, a comment, and let me know what you thought of the runaway hamster. And tell me if you have any pets of yours that get out of their cages, or dogs that run away, or kitty cats. All right, you all have a good day now. Bye-bye.